And we will be going into this article of Shaykh Brancatella. This is a master's in philosophy. Just to break this issue down very easily for you, is firstly, what is this revolving around? This discussion revolves around al-hawadith. What is al-hawadith? Al-hawadith would entail or is defined as al-wujud ba'd al-adam, which is existence after non-existence. Anything which is which has the nature of being hadath is described as existence after non-existence. This is what al-hawadith entails. In English, they refer to it as contingents. The contingent nature of something is referred to as being hawadith. After we say this, the discussion and the difference between the Najdis and Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah say that hawadith are not qa'imah fi dhati, that the hawadith, the contingents, are not established in the being of Allah or in the aseity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is something that is not found in the dhat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the position of the Ash'aris. While Abu Abbas Ahmad bin Taymiyyah, he had the position that hawadith are established in the dhat of Allah. But these hawadith are referred to as hawadith ghayr makhluq, non-created hawadith. Why are they non-created? They are non-created because they are within the dhat of Allah. So things like nuzul of Allah, descent of Allah, is a hadith. It's contingent. The actions, af'al of Allah are hadith. And the position of the Ash'ari is refuted by the modern Salaf, so-called pseudo-Salafi movement, as being a bid'ah. So this article by Shaykh Brancatella is from that premise that the Ash'aris have the position of Aristotle, the God of Aristotle. What does that mean, the God of Aristotle? What he actually means is that the God of Aristotle, which is a God which has no sifat, no attributes, is a God which has no af'al, no divine actions. He claims, or the premise generally of the modern Salafi movement, is that the Ash'ari was so influenced by Platonic, Aristotelian, Socratic philosophy, like Jahm bin Safwan, they were so influenced that they then denied the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, based upon that, he wants to propose that Al-Imam Muhammad bin Ismail al-Bukhari rahimallahu ta'ala had the same position as Ibn Taymiyyah. This is the premise of the whole article, that Al-Imam al-Bukhari had the same position as Ibn Taymiyyah. And to validate that claim, he gives citation from the work of Al-Imam al-Bukhari known as Khalqu Af'al al-Ibad, which is the creation of the actions of the creation of the actions of the ibad, of the servants. And he gives citations to the Sahih of Al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimallahu ta'ala. So what citations does he give from Al-Imam al-Bukhari? One of the citations he gives from Al-Imam al-Bukhari is from the chapter headings of his kitab, his Sahih, الجامع الصحيح المسند المختصر من سنن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, he quotes Imam Bukhari and he quotes the chapter headings. Now these chapter headings in the Sahih of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala are known as Tarajim al-Abwab. What is Tarajim al-Abwab? The headings in the chapter headings of the book. They say, for instance, Fiqh al-Imam al-Bukhari fi tarajimihi. The fiqh of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala is in the tarajim, in the headings. So Shaykh makes reference to one of the Tarajim al-Abwab in the Kitab al-Tawheed. Kitab al-Tawheed of the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, towards the end of the Sahih, you find a chapter heading which is regarding Qawlullahi ta'ala, Kulla yawmin huwa fi sha'n. In Surah Al-Rahman, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, at every moment He is fi sha'n, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings something into creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes something out of creation, and all of these various things. And then when Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala mentions Allah, the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ما يأتيهم من ذكر من ربهم محدث. So this mentions the word muhdath in reference to Al-Quran al-Kareem. ما يأتيهم, does not arrive to them, min dhikrin, any remembrance, min rabbihim, from their Lord, muhdath, new. So this is the chapter heading. So what else? وقوله تعالى لعل الله يحدث بعد ذلك أمرا. So note here, and Allah will bring about after that some matter. وَأَنَّ حَدَثَهُ. So Imam Bukhari now, he comments. He says, the hadath of Allah لا يشبه حدث المخلوقين, does not resemble the hadath of the creation. So, and remember I mentioned to you the definition of hadath. لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, because of the saying of Allah the Most High, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There is nothing that resembles Him, meaning Allah, yet He is all hearing and all seeing. وقال ابن مسعود, and Abdullah bin Mas'ud رضي الله عنه said, عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, إن الله يحدث من أمره ما يشاء, that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, indeed Allah will bring about from His matter ما يشاء, whatever He wills. وَإِنَّ مِمَّا أَحْدَثَ, and from that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أحدث, meaning brought about, أَلَّا تَكَلَّمُوا فِي الصَّلَاةِ, is that do not speak in the prayer. This is the chapter heading. From this Tarjamatul Bab, some people understood that Al-Imam Al-Bukhari rahimallahu ta'ala Al-Imam Al-Bukhari rahimallahu ta'ala, he was attempting to say that hawadith are qa'ima fi dhatillah, meaning hawadith, new things that come about, are established in the essence of Allah. And this is the position of Ibn Taymiyyah. So they concluded that from reading this. So what does Shaykh say? Shaykh, for instance, he quotes Al-Imam Badruddin Al-Aini rahimahullah ta'ala. When he quotes Al-Imam Al-Badruddin Al-Aini rahimahullah ta'ala, he writes the following. What he writes, he has a passage from Imam Badruddin al-Aini. And remember, Imam Badruddin al-Aini is a Hanafi jurist and hadith scholar from a 9th century Egypt, who wrote a famous commentary known as Umdatul Qari. He brings about a passage which gives the impression that he affirms that temporal things are from the attributes of Allah. It gives that impression. This is how the citation from that passage of Badruddin al-Aini gives. Now what happens then is that he quotes further down, he quotes a Shaykh Anwar Shah Kashmiri, who was from Kashmir, who taught in India. And Anwar Shah Kashmiri, he has ta'liqat upon Sahih Bukhari. Now those ta'liqat are famous. They are known as Faidul Bari. And he also has another ta'liq upon the Jami' of Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, which is known as Al-Arf al-Shadhi, which I have read in its entirety, that entire ta'liq of Anwar Shah Kashmiri. So what he does, he gives citation to Anwar Shah Kashmiri. I will return back to that later. Now when I went and checked Umdatul Qari, and I went and checked Fathul Bari, it becomes very clear that Shaykh has not understood the discussion. And this, it's not without surprise that he doesn't give a citation of Fathul Bari. If you look at this pristine work of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, this pristine work, Fathul Bari, they do entertain discussion on what Shaykh is proposing. And that is why Badruddin al-Aini gives sight to that. They do not support that position, because the tarajim of Imam Bukhari and the tarajim al-abwab of Sahih Bukhari are read by ulama who then study the tarajim and infer what Imam Bukhari is attempting to convey to the reader. And remember, the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, many Shia, Rawafid, they also Bukhari do not realize that Sahih al-Bukhari is a technical work. It's written for experts. It's written for people who have expertise in the science of hadith. So Al-Imam al-Bukhari, Al-Imam Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he refutes this. Remember one thing, what he does mention, وَهَذَا قَوْلُ بَعْضِ الْمُعْتَزِلَةِ وَأَهْلِ الظَّاهِرِ. He states this qawl, this position, that people misinterpret this position. The position of Ibn Taymiyyah is also the position of some of the Mu'tazila. He doesn't mention Ibn Taymiyyah, he just mentions to believe that the Kalamullah is hadath. What is hadath? It comes into being. Let me break it down even further for lay people. The position of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that the kalam of Allah is qadim, eternal, everlasting, pre-eternal. It has no beginning and no end. It doesn't come about. It's not something created. It's not something hadith, contingent, which means existence after non-existence. But the Mu'tazila believe that the Quran and the kalam of Allah is created. It comes about. This is why Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he says this position to believe the Quran is hadath is the position of Mu'tazila. But then he mentions it is also the position of Ahlul Zahir. What he means by Ahlul Zahir is some of the people who ascribe themselves to Al-Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. They ascribe themselves, like the Shia falsely ascribe themselves to Al-Imam Ja'far Sadiq, the Wahhabis falsely ascribe themselves to Al-Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. These Ahlul Zahir, they believe that when Allah speaks, the new speech comes about. This is known as hawadith. But they say it's غير مخلوق. It's not created. It comes about. It's like if a person stands up or a person sits down. You do not say he's standing is something new. This is the example they give, even though we Ahlul Sunnah would say the actions are created. But the hadath, they believe this something new is now within the that of Allah. So this is the position of Ibn Taymiyyah. And this is what Shaykh is attempting to ascribe to Al-Imam Bukhari. But what Al-Imam Ibn Hajar says, he says, وَهُوَ خَطَأٌ. This is a mistake. لأن الذكر الموصوف في الآية بالإحداث ليس هو نفس كلامه تعالى لقيام الدليل على أن محدثا ومنشأ ومخترعا ومخلوقا ألفاظ مترادفة على معنى واحد، فإذا لم يجز وصف كلامه القائم بذاته تعالى بأنه مخلوق لم يجز وصفه بأنه محدث. He said words like mansha, inception point, mukhtara, invented, makhluq, created, muhdath, contingent, all of these are mutaradifah, synonyms. We do not ascribe them to the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the question is, what is the meaning of muhdath in the ayah? In the ayatul Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes kalamullah as muhdath, what is the meaning of that? He states further down, he states وَيَحْتَمِلُ أَنْ يَكُونَ الْمُرَادُ بِالذِّكْرِ هُنَا وَعْظَ الرَّسُولِ وَإِيَّاهُمْ وَتَحْذِيرَهُ مِنَ الْمَعَاصِي فَسَمَّاهُ ذِكْرًا وَأَضَافَ إِلَيْهِ إِذْ هُوَ فَاعِلُهُ. So what that means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about for the creation a new wa'ad, a new admonition. But what he mentions further down is, he says, وقال بعضهم, some of them said, في هذه الآية, regarding this ayah, أن مرجع الإحداث إلى الإتيان لا إلى الذكر القديم. That the word ihdath, muhdath, here refers to the revelation of the Quran, not to the sifa al-qadima, not to the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لأن نزول القرآن على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان شيئا بعد شيء فكان نزوله يحدث حينا بعد حين كما. So he states, because the revelation of the Quran upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one thing after another. Its revelation was from time to time. كما أن العالم يعلم ما لا يعلمه الجاهل فإذا علمه الجاهل حدث عنده العلم. Like an alim knows what a jahil doesn't, but then the jahil learns something and the hadath comes about for the jahil. حدث عنده العلم, meaning knowledge comes about for the jahil. ولم يكن إحداثه عند التعلم إحداث عين المعلم. That when it comes about for the jahil, it doesn't mean it's ihdath for the teacher. So and what does Ibn Hajar state regarding this last proposition? He states, قلت والاحتمال الأخير أقرب إلى مراد البخاري. He states the last possibility is the closest intent of al-Bukhari, which is what? That the hadath, the contingency, was regarding the revelation, not that hadath is qa'ima bi dhatillah, as Shaykh attempts to propose in this poorly written article, meaning this is the nature of modern day academia, that you write these poorly written articles based on false premises. Then he states what is more interesting. He states He states قيل أن مبنى هذه التراجم عنده على إثبات أن أفعال العباد مخلوق. That it has been said that the basis for these tarajim chapter headings was based upon the fact that the actions of the creation are created. ومراده هنا الحدث بالنسبة للإنزال. The meaning of the hadath here is for revelation. وبذلك جزم ابن المنير ومن تبعه وقال الكرماني. So I will go on to the qawl of Kirmani. Before I do that, recently I was in a local bookshop, a bookshop that has all the various useful books of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And from amongst those books that I found is this, Ithbatul Haddi Lillah. What does this mean? It means establishing al-had for Allah. But it doesn't stop there. It says, وَبِأَنَّهُ قَاعِدٌ وَجَالِسٌ عَلَى عَرْشِهِ. That he is sitting jalis ala arshihi. This is the Salafi publications. That they believe that you establish a had for Allah is qa'id wa jalis ala arshih. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ascribed according to them with what they refer to as jalus ala al-arsh. Now, within this work, they refute ulama of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the likes of whom, firstly, after they refute non-Sunni ulama like Jahm bin Safwan. Who is Jahm bin Safwan? Jahm bin Safwan, remember, Jahm bin Safwan is one of the early innovators that denied all the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when he denied the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said you cannot even describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Shaykh, and you cannot ascribe any sifat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what the Salafis do is they equate between Jahm bin Safwan and the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So today they refer to the Ash'aris as being Jahmiyyah. And this is such a common mistake. There are some fallacies that these people do. One of those fallacies that they do is that they claim that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah only affirms 7 attributes. Only 7 attributes. They keep repeating the same thing. They keep stating that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah only affirms 7 sifat. This is incorrect. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah affirm the sifat of Allah that are mentioned in Al-Quran al-Kareem and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Not only the sifat, the 7 sifat as they claim, but within this work, and remember this work which mentions Jalus for Allah was only published 2 years ago, but this is the 3rd print. After they mention the Jahmis, Al-Jahm bin Safwan, who died in 128 Hijri, they mention Bishr al-Marisi, another who died in 218 Hijri. Then they mention one of the leaders of the Mu'tazila, Ahmad bin Abi Du'ad al-Qadi, who was one of the persecutors of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Who do they mention as number 4? Ibn Hibban al-Busti, the author of the Sahih. from Ahlul Hadith, who died in the year 354 Hijri, they place Ibn Hibban, rahimahullah, as from amongst the list of innovators. And then they place also Al-Imam al-Tahawi, the author of Aqidah Tahawiyah. Why do they place Al-Imam al-Tahawi, rahimahullah ta'ala? They mention قال في عقيدته الطحاوية وتعالى عن الحدود والغايات والأركان والأعضاء والأدوات لا تحويه الجهات الست كسائر المبتدعات. So this is a passage that is found in the Aqidah Tahawiyah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends al-hudud, al-ghayat, al-arkan, al-a'da, al-adawat. So they deem this as being innovation. So they place al-Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala under there. And then who else from the ulama of Ahl Sunnah? They place al-Imam al-Khattabi, who's the author of Ma'alim al-Sunan, the commentary on the Sunan of al-Imam Abu Dawood. And then they place other ulama of Ahl Sunnah like al-Imam al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah, al-Imam al-Bayhaqi, as having an innovated belief. So like this, if Sunni ulama do not ascribe al-had, they deem this as being what? As being a point of innovation. Similarly, julus for Allah. Julus for Allah. That they ascribe julus to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they make in this book a list of people whom they deem as misguided on this. One of them that they mention is Ibn Hajar al-Haytami. Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, the mu'tamad of the Shafi'i school of the latecomers. They place him as an innovator because he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from direction, jiha. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the belief of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from jiha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not contained by makan. So in this they place al-mabhathu sabi'u, seventh discussion, isbatul makani lillahi ta'ala, establishment of al-makan. Isbatul makan lillahi ta'ala. So one of the brothers here states, Shaykh, I'm going to forward you book titles that will help you understand these matters a lot better, as you got mixed up. You'll enjoy them inshallah. Additionally, the same brother states that many of the Salafis respect me, but due to me indulging in these issues, that is no longer the case. The answer is that I mentioned at the beginning of this live stream that we as Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, if people are ascribing to us as the Ash'aris as being Jahmiyyah, as people who are nufatu sifat, people who negate the attributes of Allah, as being quburiyun, grave worshippers, as those who worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will of course respond. You state that book is not an authentic book amongst the Salafi scholars about the had. Please research before spreading misinformation. Well, this book has been published by, it states قدم له وعلق عليه أبو معاذ مسلط بن بندر العتيبي and Abu Abdullah Adil bin Abdullah al-Hamdan عفى الله عنه. And a passage from it with regard to الرد على من أنكر الحد is from it's ascribed to it's taken from Bayanu Talbis al-Jahmiyyah, which is a rad of Abu al-Abbas Ahmad bin Taymiyyah upon al-Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi rahimahullah. And famous Salafis on YouTube have been teaching from this book, like the famous YouTube scholar Shamsuddin in Arabic. He has been actually teaching and instructing from this book. This book ascribes al-julus, al-qu'ud to Allah. It ascribes al-makan lillahi ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is located in a makan. One of the common misconceptions, or not even misconceptions, propaganda that is spread by the Salafi movement with regard to Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah they do not affirm the sifat of Allah of al-ulu or al-fawqiyah. We must affirm the fawqiyah of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَهُوَ الْقَاهِرُ فَوْقَ عِبَادِهِ, fawq. And similarly al-ulu. And we do not add anything more than that. We also affirm the istawa for Allah. We do not add anything additional to what Allah has stated in Al-Quran Al-Kareem, or what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam